Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, July 26, 2018 regular session of the Xenia City Council. We will come to order at this time and open with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Dale Louderback. If you would rise with me, please, for the moment of silence and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilman Louderback. May I have roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace.
Here.
Councilman Scrivens.
Here.
Councilman Louderback.
Here.
Councilman Smith.
Here.
Councilman Dean. Here. Mayor May.
Here.
President Engel.
Here. May I have a motion, please, for approval of minutes for the July 12th, 2018 regular session, please?
So moved, Mr. President.
Moved by Councilman Smith. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on our minutes, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace.
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilman Louderback.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Abstain.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We have no special presentations scheduled for this evening, so we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the Xenia City Council this evening, please feel free to do so. Step to the podium, provide us your name and address. Limit your comments 4 to 5 minutes, please.
Well, I'm back again. Same complaint. I don't understand where all this money's going for the streets. It was voted in 2010. I was reading an article, well, matter of fact, here, what you guys wrote, and it was approved in 2010. $500,000 was allocated to the streets. I just like to know how the streets got so devastated and tore up just like everybody else. You had $500,000. Okay, and then I read an article in the paper by the mayor saying that we had allocated, well, the council had allocated $800,000 for road repairs. This was in July 10th. The article in the Dayton Daily newspaper said you allocated $800,000 for repairs for the roads. Okay, now you're asking the city, the people of Xenia to vote on $1.35 million levy. So that's only $200,000 difference, a little give or take. So if you can't do it on $500,000 and you ain't doing it on $800,000, how's over $1 million a year going to make a difference? I mean, the numbers don't add up. Yeah, the streets need to be repaired. Don't get me wrong; they look terrible, and the downtown looks good. Hope you don't have to take the city if other people come in and want to do business. Don't take them out in the rural areas because it's shameful how the roads or streets repaired. Like I say, I lived where I'm at now over 47 years. And I had never seen my streets either way repaid. So, you know, that's kind of irritating. So, I'd just like to know where all this money's going. Now, in last, I believe it was in June, maybe this month, you passed a bill, ordinance, whatever it is, you're going to sell city property. I would highly recommend, if you do sell any of this city property, put it in street repairs, where it should have been in the first place. That's where I look at it. So, and everything. I don't know. There's got to be an answer somewhere. So, I know you're going to vote tonight on the tax levy. And this time, the citizens have the right to vote yes or no. And this is the way it should be. Now, there's a lot of, there's a lot of disappointments and everything else, myself included, the way the city's been running in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And you can't blame the other administration for what they done to a point. Yes, you can use them, hold them accountable, but that's no excuse. So you gotta do better. And road safety, I keep hearing about these 2 roundabouts. The city of Xenia does not need roundabouts where you're gonna put it. City of Xenia does not need roundabouts. That is the most unsafe thing that you could ever do to a city. Put a roundabout where you don't need. One on West Church Street, down there on 42, 35, and New Jasper Road. Somebody's can't make them roundabouts. So I hope you take into consideration all that before you even come up with a proposal to put roundabouts in the city of Xenia. That is unsafe. People don't understand roundabouts. I don't know if you guys have ever been on one, but everything's you're right of way. So who's got the right of way? It's up to the individual. You got red lights out there doing the job where they're supposed to. Yeah, you might have to sit there for a little while, but you got safety. And if people running red lights, that ain't the red light's fault. It's to the individual driving the vehicle. So please take into consideration before you ask the city's people, please put it on the ballot, because I don't think it'll pass. So, like I say, I'd like to know where all this money is, that our roads are in terrible shape, and you ask for over $1 million. So, I hope somebody's got an answer. So, with that, another thing, I want to apologize to the Facebook people. For the reason why I say I come from a different era. Yeah, I'm one of the ones. I like to talk to eye to who I'm accusing people. But this is not my generation. So this is their generation. This is the way things are done. Everybody's on text and all that stuff. That's the way it's done. Well, that's not where I'm from. So I apologize to them if I made them upset. And I keep hearing this term, fake news. And because they're saying Facebook people's got fake news. Well, where do they get their fake news? Right here. I mean, if you don't put nothing on the ballot for people to vote on that live here, and then say, okay, well, you got to take it or leave it, that is not right. That's not kosher. So, with that, I'm going to let it go at that for now.
Sir,
Thank you.
You've been here on a number of occasions.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Ken Harvison. I live at 1532 Calmore Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else care to come and address the Xenia City Council this evening, please? Seeing no one else come forward, we will move to our next part of the agenda, which is our old business. First item, only item under old business, is Resolution 2018-U, a second reading, determining to proceed with the levy of a property tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation for street purposes, and to submit the question of the tax to the electors at the November 6, 2018 election, originally introduced by Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move for passage.
Move for passage. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on the resolution, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach,
No.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
No.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next part of our agenda is the public hearings section. We have one item, which is ordinance 2018-21, a second reading, approving a major change to a concept plan for an 11.396 acre planned unit development at 441, 457, and 469 Dayton Avenue, originally introduced by Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move for passage.
Move for passage. Second, please.
Aye.
Seconded by the Vice President. Any discussion or question on this item, please?
Mr. President, just a reminder that you should conduct the public hearing with this.
Sorry, thank
Yep.
you.
It's a little bit different sequence than we're used to, so
I
it's.
was gonna say,
Yep.
I'm not quite familiar with the sequence on this since we've already introduced it, or introduced it.
Yeah, the fact that it's on the table is okay. You can just proceed with the
Okay,
public hearing.
thank you. At this point in time then, we have it up on the agenda for vote. I will open the public hearing and ask anyone wishing to speak for the change in plan to step to the podium, provide us your name and address. Limit your comments 4 to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one come forward, anyone wishing to speak against the change to the plan?
John Kelp, 936 Orville Way. Back several years ago, when I was still on council, this plan came in front of council. At that point, it was 32 units, I believe. There were some issues with the size of the roads, whether we could get fire trucks even around through the turning radius and whatnot on that property. Now the property owner is asking to reduce that number and go with 50 units on that property. That is not a desirable piece of property, in my opinion, for somebody that's going to come in and buy a market rate piece of housing stock. You're gonna be looking at the back of Dollar General. I mean, it's just not a desirable piece of property. So I would hate to see council approve a change to this PUD without having any guarantee from that developer that that's not going to be low-income housing. We've talked about the taxes, we've talked about needing to grow our tax base, about the need for higher income individuals in the city. And if we put any more low-income housing in the city, we are just shooting ourselves in the foot yet again. So we've seen nothing from the developer on what he's planning on building. We haven't seen or heard how many square foot these townhome units are going to be. If it's not generating enough property tax for the schools, once again, we're killing our schools. That's why we increased the square footage size for a home and for a lot in the city of Xenia, because our old legislation didn't generate enough property tax for the schools. So we changed that. So to me, you're about to vote on something with blind faith on a developer, and you've seen nothing from that developer on what he's actually proposing. Have you asked how much are these townhomes going to sell for? What's the square footage? Are they going to have garages? Are they not going to have garages? I mean, there's a lot of unknown questions here. And in my opinion, without asking those questions, you're looking at a piece of property that's just not desirable for the type residents that we're trying to draw into our city. So I hope you guys ask the questions. Thank you.
Would anyone else wish to speak against this change to the plan?
Is it possible for us, we're representing the developer, can we respond to the comments?
At the end of this section, there'll be an opportunity for a person to speak neither for nor against
Gotcha, okay.
the issue. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the development, please? Seeing no one else come forward, if someone wishes to speak neither for nor against the development, but wishes to speak on the subject of the development, please step to the podium, provide us your name and address, limit your comments 4 to 5 minutes, please.
Would that be yes?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Tina Kamutzis with Neighborhood Housing Partnership of Greater Springfield. We are a co-developer. We are a nonprofit in Springfield, Ohio that has served this community for the past dozen years with our counseling services. We also have the architect from Buckeye Hope, our primary developer, who can answer some of the questions that I think have been raised about the units. We are looking at 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom townhomes, a total of 50, and we have the site plan there. Do you want to kind of talk about the radius for access?
Yeah, we work closely with the planning and zoning staff of the city in refining this plan. The change that we're asking for, originally, I think this was presented to you with, was it 30 or 32 duplex units. They were all duplexes. And I think the developer decided that we needed to make everything work feasibly to up the number to 50 units. We now have 4-plex buildings that are a combination of townhouses, 2 bedrooms, and 2 and 3 bedroom units, and flats, which are primarily for handicap and ADA compliant units. There'll be a total of 8 of those units in flat configuration. All the units will have a garage space built into the unit, and then there'll be another second parking space on the apron of the unit. We worked to comply with all of the turning radiuses and street widths that the fire department asked for, and modified the plan to make sure that all those are included in the design of the site. We've got open space on the site for recreation space for children living here. I might add, these are rental units and not for sale, but the developer will have a management company on site. I might let you address that maybe better than I. But anything I can answer physically about the buildings, here's a typical exterior elevation. Hopefully you can all see that of the building. Some 2-story, some 1-story. Any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to.
And just wanted to make sure that everyone understands this is not public housing. It's not a housing authority project. It is affordable housing. There will be RLG Property Management who manages multifamily all over the state and has a great reputation for the maintenance and just making sure that it's a positive addition to a community.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak neither for nor against the change to the plan, please step to the podium, write us your name and address. Limit your comments to 4 to 5 minutes, please.
It's Michelle McFarland at 383 Antrim Road. I live directly behind there. I've been taking care of the property past my fence line for I don't know how many years. There hasn't been anybody out there taking care of it at all. So who's going to take care of this, and who's going to protect the people that live there? Are they going to put another fence up, or what are they going to do?
I mean, they will. That's the problem with the vacant abandoned properties is that
There is nothing vacant on that area at all.
Ma'am, sir, please. This time is generally not a time for back and forth discussion. If you would wish to consult with the lady afterwards to answer a question, that's fine, but this is typically a session where individuals just may address council on a particular concern. Thank you.
Yeah, that property hasn't been taken care of, I don't know for how long, but just when I got home from work today, there was somebody out there mowing. We've been doing the mowing back there for I don't know how many years. When it rains, the rainwater, everything washes down in the yards and the property. Nobody comes out, nobody does anything. That's been going on for years.
Anything else, ma'am?
No.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to address the Xenia City Council this evening, please, on the subject of being neither for nor against the change to the plan? Seeing no one else come forward, I will close the public hearing at this point in time and then entertain any questions from any of my colleagues on the development and change to the plan.
The one question I heard come up, Mr. President, was the size of the units. The architect, I'm sure, could speak to that. Square footage. Yeah. Square footage of the
Yes,
units.
sir. The two-bedroom units would have a minimum square footage of 1,100 square feet, and the three bedrooms would have a minimum square footage of 1,250 square feet. That's living space, does not include the garage or
Understand.
any unconditioned space.
I understand that Mr. Forster is not here to answer any questions.
Yeah, but I can give it a crack if you have additional questions.
Well, the additional question is, if these were units for sale, what would the minimum square footage be for a two-bedroom unit and a three-bedroom unit?
Yeah, it would be conditioned upon the size of the lot. I don't have that information in front of me. What I can tell you is that the city planner has been pretty much at every point in the process in discussions with the developer, the architect, to make sure that the components that they have been pursuing or that they are pursuing are compliant. Bear in mind also, this is a modification to a plan that has already been approved by council. So they're asking essentially in this request to increase the number, as was stated earlier, the number of units on the site. And I think a lot of the concerns that have been raised tonight are valid concerns in terms of wanting to have a strong housing stock in our community. Presently, this type of a townhome rental unit is in short supply, if at all available in Xenia right now.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President. Mr.
Dale.
President.
Sorry, Dale had his hand up first.
I'm sorry.
You referred to market rate. Would you agree that the market rate in Xenia is different than the market rate in Beaver Creek? Are you familiar with?
I'm not, maybe my associate here would, are you familiar with the market rates of units in
I think
Xenia?
Beaver Creek is a growing community.
Well, my point is the market rate in Xenia is a lot lower than the market rate in Beaver Creek. I'm a realtor, so.
Okay, so you know better than I.
But I'm going to vote against this project because we don't need this type of housing in Xenia. We've got no guarantee that you won't. Unless I'm reading something wrong, we've got no guarantees it won't be low-income housing. Is there, I mean, it's an open-end book. The way I read this, you say, you can change your mind once you start building out there. You can, you've got flexibility.
Well, the funding mechanism for this is through the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. And again, we're not the public housing authority. So these are for working households with incomes going up to 60, and I think in the next round, even 80% of the median income.
If you've done your market study, we have ample supply of that housing right now in Xenia. So again, I'm against this project. Thank you.
Councilman.
Mr. President, I had spoken earlier to the city manager regarding the style and the actual construction of the property in terms of a basement. We live in Tornado Alley, and to put new housing up with no regard to the safety that might need to be, I think that's a bit short-sighted. This project, as Mr. Cowpett alluded to, was on board before I got to see here on council. And had I been on the front end, I'd have pushed for at least a basement. I had a townhome when I lived in Pittsburgh, two floors above ground, one below. And it was a storm shelter when I had to have one. It was cool in the summer and it was nice in the winter. But everything's a patio type of situation, and I don't know. We'll see.
Thank you,
sir.
Other comments or questions, please?
Mr. President,
handicap
would this be appropriate time for me to address the concerns of the woman about the condition of the site?
Please.
Very briefly, please.
Sure. The developer does not own the site at this time. The developer wouldn't do that until further in the process, so it's not anybody that we're representing's responsibility at this time. I will say that if the site is developed, the site will be taken care of in a much better form than it is now. And I think that's a good reason for you all to vote on it.
Thank you. Any other last questions or comments, please?
think, Mr. President, I think the developers should keep in mind that the people who maintain that property through adverse possession, they ought to be compensated. At some point, fair is just fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
I'll pass.
Councilman Lauterbach,
No.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Yeah.
Come
Oh,
back
sorry.
and see.
Councilman Scrivens.
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Okay.
Thank
Motion
you.
carried.
Next item under new business is Resolution 2018-V, an emergency, authorizing the, sorry, go back. Our first item under new business, ordinance 2018-22, an emergency, amending sections 1062.21 titled Special Event Permits of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Xenia and declaring an emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Ordinance 2018-22 is presented, which recommends amendments to section 1062.21, our special events permit of the codified ordinance. This legislation is proposed as follow-up action to prior conversations and direction from City Council to develop legislative means to allow limited alcohol sales at the Xenia Community Festival. For the past 2 years, City Council has authorized the festival planners to experiment with a beer garden type of amenity for the event. The festival planners believe the concept as an attraction has the potential to grow as a major fundraiser for the festival, and that it adds to the diversity of offerings for the event. After lengthy discussion and consideration on the part of council previously, you directed staff to develop legislation to authorize the amenity on a very limited basis for the event into the future. My office with the law director have evaluated options and determined that the best manner in which to provide legislative structure for the allowance of this is through an amendment to section 1062.21 as presented this evening. The recommended language directs our office, my office, to develop and enforce guidelines for the program through a facility use agreement process. With this, however, the language requires that any specific alcohol use provisions in such an agreement would be approved by administrative motion of City Council prior to the event. So the final approval would come back to you for the event. So staff has also taken the liberty to include some additional amendments to the existing special events provisions within this code section to clean it up and ensure the protection of the city. Changes should also help to simplify the language for the ease and convenience of the general public when it comes to these type of events. As council will recall, the original special events language was somewhat experimental when we implemented it a number of years ago, and we think with these changes we can provide a better program oversight. The amendments also incorporate thoughts and direction from council resulting from prior work sessions on the broader special events topic. So staff is recommending this evening the legislation be presented and approved as an emergency. This is due in part to a fairly tight timeline at this juncture in the year to be able to facilitate this amenity at the forthcoming community festival.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Scrivens. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Lauterbach. Discussion or question on this motion, please?
Could I just clarify? So this is changing language to really the entire application process. This is not just
Substitute.
the alcohol part.
Yeah, so what we've done, we've included a component that speaks to this issue of the alcohol sales and put some fairly narrow
While
provisions around it.
changing a lot of the other language
Yeah,
as
and it
well.
updates the other language. We incorporated this original special events permit language while I was still assistant city manager, actually a number of years ago. We had nothing on the books, and so it was a bit of an experiment for us. We have observed a number of issues in the language that we had previously, and these additional steps will help to correct some of those things, with the goal of being the goal being that we protect the city's interest from a liability standpoint, but still streamline the process to allow folks to pursue these special events.
So my personal concern is I've always voted no on the alcohol at Shawnee Park. Is there a way, if for some reason, I don't think this would be an issue, but if this were to not pass, if I vote no on this, because I do agree with the language change, but again, I am against even putting this last section on here.
Mm-hmm.
Could we come back with some of these language changes?
We could segment it out as presented this evening, and with the issue on the floor the way it is, you would consider it in its full form unless you made an amendment
I
to
understand.
exclude a portion of it. If
But-
it was the
but did-
desire of council, we could, you could approve an amendment striking that section, and we could bring it back separately, but it would require introduction of another motion. And my only concern with delaying it tonight is that, they want to proceed with the event this year if council's so willing to allow that, and, we're in August and they've already initiated their planning process. So to delay it another 2 weeks would hinder their ability to plan for September.
And if I read this correctly, if a organization comes to us and requests that they can be able to sell alcohol, it would still have to come to us though for approval?
Correct. Any request would have to come back to council. So we would set this up in a manner such that for the special event, the applicant would have to sign off on a facility use agreement, and if they wanted to sell alcohol, in this case, the community festival is the only organization the council's really endorsed for that purpose. But that portion of it would have to come back to council for approval.
Does that make us liable in some capacity though, because
Nothing
we're picking and
different.
choosing who we get to sell, who sells alcohol and who
The
doesn't?
city still reserves the right based on the type of event, as long as we're not discriminating against anyone. Based on the type of event with the code language that you have in place, to have some discretion. Might add that, with the approval of this, should you approve it, there would be an administrative motion request sometime in the next couple of weeks, the next meeting or two, related to this fall's event, because the legislation would take effect immediately, and so these provisions would be in place and would be required as part of this fall's community festival.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or question, please?
My question is, if we're only allowing one group to be able to sell alcohol, how are we not discriminating against every other group that might be potentially interested?
Well, I wish Jeanette was here. She could probably get into a more legalistic response. But again, council's established certain parameters for the types of events, and the way you've established those parameters, they're very narrowly defined, which means that at this juncture, there's only one type of an event of that nature that would qualify.
But it wouldn't preclude another entity that met our
Criteria.
standards to come in and say, I'd like to do this, still requiring the same degree of scrutiny by council and administrative motion before it would be authorized.
Correct. So by intent, council would still have the ability ultimately to make that decision.
Mr. City Manager, do the operators have to have a liquor control permit?
So under this program, and I don't know if we've had some of this discussion. I think, Councilman, prior to you joining the council last year, we had a lot of discussion about this. If you have any familiarity with state liquor control requirements, there's a fairly rigid set of requirements in terms of the types of individuals that can serve and sell, and the license requirements that they have to meet. In order to even consider this, the first step would be that an entity would have to apply for a liquor permit. Our chief of police and his office review that, to sign off on a liquor control permit before anything else would even process. So there's a fairly rigid set of expectations. We have actually added additional expectations on top of what liquor control requires.
Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace,
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilman Scrivens,
Even though I'm not a beer drinker, yes.
Councilman Lauterbach,
Aye.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
No.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item under new business is Resolution 2018-V, also an emergency, authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application for the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs and execute contracts as required for program year 2019, PY 33, for the Colorado Drive Improvements Project and declaring an emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Staff is recommending Resolution 2018-V, which would authorize the city's application in the Public Works Commission for funding assistance, which would be targeted to continue the repair and replacement of a major portion of Colorado Drive. The portion of Colorado targeted would be between McKinley Elementary School, roughly Alabama Drive, and Upper Bellbrook Road. This would be a curb-to-curb replacement. As council will recall, many portions of the drive lanes between Bellbrook Avenue and McKinley were completed with the 2018 street program. In addition, if awarded this OPWC funding, select ADA ramps, curbing, and sidewalk would also be included for replacement over the entire length of that roadway to be replaced. The total estimated project cost is $733,329, of which the city's local match portion, if awarded, would be $190,666. And this could be funded through either our general fund or 228 fund would be eligible as well. Staff's requesting this item be approved as an emergency this evening in order to meet the tight application deadline established by the state. When we get these from ODOT, we don't have too much turnaround time. So that's why typically you see these as emergency items, because most communities don't require 2 readings for a resolution. So again, that's why a lot of these resolutions are as an emergency. So that's what we recommend.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, as an emergency?
So moved as an emergency?
Moved by the mayor, seconded by the vice president. Discussion or question on this motion, please?
Mr. President, I was on Colorado Drive just today. I went from Lower Bell to West Second there. And when I got to about the school, I said, boy, I sure wish they'd finished this. And I get a chance now to vote yes. So I'm sure the residents will be too happy. So.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please? Kudos, Mr. City Manager, to you and staff, once again, seeking out funding that is your state tax dollars
At work.
now coming back to the city for a approximately slightly more than 1/3 match in a grant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach,
Aye.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next item is ordinance 2018-23, an introduction, amending chapters 1062 to be titled Street Banner Programs and section 298.01E, table E.3 of the codified ordinances of the city of Xenia. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. The amendments to Chapter 1026 are presented this evening, following up on directions previously given by City Council. As you will recall, over the past year, City Council has engaged in evaluation of the city's policies regarding our promotional banners. We have long allowed these over-the-street banners for advertising purposes of various types of community or county programs and events. With the increasing demand for access to our banner program and with the existing policy lacking some substantive details or guidelines, it became apparent that memorializing some limitations and conditions was necessary. So Council instructed us to do so. Based on City Council's feedback and instructions, the City Manager's Office and Law Department have developed legislative changes as recommended this evening to codify the Council's wishes regarding the over-the-street banner program. Staff determined that the best way really to do this was to essentially piggyback and amend an existing portion of the code in Chapter 1026, which currently only addresses our street pole banner program. This change would make the chapter broader and more inclusive for all banner programs with subsections for both the pole banners as well as the over-the-street banners. The new code language is based directly on Council's feedback, provides access to the over-the-street banner program to registered charities, nonprofits, educational institutions, and governmental agencies which are sponsoring or hosting programs or events open to the broader community. The recommended language authorizes City Manager to develop and maintain specific policy guidelines to ensure basic standards and require indemnification to protect the city's interest, while at the same time making this unique marketing opportunity available for the program participants that you had intended. The new language also includes a simple fee as you directed to help offset our expenses, which does include the installation and review of the materials and so forth. So staff recommends this evening introduction of the amended code language.
Thank you. May I have an introduction, please, from one of my colleagues?
So introduced.
Introduced by Councilman Lauterbach. Thank you. Next item is Resolution 2018-W, also an introduction, requesting the Xenia Municipal Court to authorize the city to establish a parking violations bureau pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 4521. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. This is another item we're following up on. As we previously discussed with City Council, it's necessary to work towards updating our parking regulations and our enforcement process. In our prior discussion, staff suggested the most effective way to do this while also improving the due process conditions for our residents or visitors was through the development of a parking violations bureau structure. City Council tentatively directed staff to initiate the development of this new structure back in the spring or early summer. The first step in officially initiating the bureau structure requires the city to formally request from the Xenia Municipal Court that they authorize by journal entry the creation of the Parking Violations Bureau to handle all parking infractions that occur within the city's territorial limits. This request to the municipal court is required under ORC 4521.04, as currently all parking violations are criminal matters that are processed through the court's Traffic Violations Bureau. Upon the court's authorization to establish the Bureau within the police division, parking infractions will be in the city will all be non-criminal in nature. The Parking Violations Bureau will handle all parking tickets written within the city's limits, and the court's Traffic Violations Bureau will continue to handle the criminal traffic citations, such as speeding, OVI, that sort of thing. Authorization from the court is the first step in our parking regulations update, and upon authorization being received from the court, council will be presented with amendments to the codified ordinances necessary to complete the transition to the non-criminal parking violations bureau and provide for the establishment of the bureau to handle these violations. I wanted to note also that in response to council's previously articulated concern about the potential need to add some staffing to manage this function, we've taken a hard look at some of our positions, where they're stationed and what they do, and I've directed the police chief to make some accommodations. And so we feel that by moving some people around and changing some work assignments, that we'll be able to accommodate the additional administrative task for this additional workload without adding additional staff. So I know that was a concern you all had, and we wanted to work hard to address that. So with that, we are respectfully recommending that you introduce the resolution this evening for consideration.
Thank you. An introduction from one of my colleagues, please.
So introduced.
Introduced by the Vice President. Thank you. Next item is an administrative motion authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with the IBI Group at a cost not to exceed $77,640 for engineering design services for the Garcia Road and OVCH sanitary sewer lift stations design project. Mr. City Manager.
Time to talk about sewer, which is not the most enjoyable thing, but staff is recommending this evening an administrative motion to authorize a contract with IBI Group to assist our engineering staff in evaluating and designing some necessary upgrades to our two of our sewer lift stations as indicated. As directed by City Council, we're pursuing incremental improvement projects that focus on ensuring our current utility services can be provided at a high level, and that where necessary, we can expand that capacity for assets like the OVCH Industrial Park, where we are poised to see some industrial growth. It's important for our general public to understand that our sanitary sewer lift stations are a critical component of our sewer conveyance system. These occur in locations where the gravity systems are not possible, and so this helps to ensure the proper flow of those waste products. Insufficient capacity with lift stations or worse, failures of those lift stations present not only a liability, environmental liability for the city, but obviously present a real practical problem for our population. Especially during periods of significant rains, and we have certainly seen a trend of these really torrential rain events over the last couple of years that's really taxed these systems. This evaluation and upgrade design project has been planned for a number of years in our 5-year capital improvement plan. We've actually pushed this project implementation back several times to try to sequence things and to be prudent with resources, but we have definitely reached a point where it is necessary to move forward, in large part with OVCH again, because we are in discussions about the potential for some industrial expansion. Staff is recommending, therefore, this evening that council authorize by administrative motion the contract with IBI in an amount not to exceed $77,640. IBI Group was determined to be the most qualified party after a request for qualifications process conducted by a select panel from the city's engineering division. So staff does recommend the approval of the motion this evening to move forward with the evaluation project.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, to approve?
Motion.
Moved by Councilman Scriven, seconded by Councilman Lauterbach. Any discussion or question on the motion, please?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Today I did visit one of our conveyance stations where we handle our sewage treatment, and it was a very interesting experience that most of the time we flush it and go, and we don't really care where it's going. Well, it goes to these two places, and it must be treated. And there's 3 or 4 or 5 processes that it goes through before we release clarified water back into the watershed. And, you know, this is something that we must have. So I'll be voting yes on this.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please?
Mr. President, it's worth noting, to piggyback on Councilman Scriven's comments, the water that we actually release from the treatment plant is substantially cleaner than the water it's being dumped into on the surface.
That's right.
So we have high-quality staff members who are working hard producing a good product.
Also, if I could, Mr. President, we talked also about grass clippings and leaves and debris that gets into the system. If we keep our system clean, it will cost us less to run it. So if you see people cutting grass and throw it in the street and just leave it, well, guess what? It's going to wash down to the catch basin. Eventually, it goes to the treatment plant. And now we got to work on that stuff. We got to get the phosphorus out. Okay, that's the main chemical that we're trying to denature. And if
Sounds
we,
like words of the past from
yeah,
Mrs. Felton.
if there's a curb and a catch basin, a gutter in front of your house, we're just asking everyone to, keep it clean.
Yeah.
Just get out there. If there's grass damming it up and you see your storm water's not flowing, get out there and cut it out. Take a weed eater or a kitchen knife and just help us help you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question? Ms. Felton would have been pleased to
She's
hear
probably
that.
rolling over today.
Roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens,
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach,
Aye.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays,
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right.
Next item is an administrative motion awarding the bid and authorizing the purchase of de-icing salt from the Detroit Salt Company through the SWOP 4G program. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. The City of Xenia has for many years participated in the Southwest Ohio Purchasers for Government, or SWOP 4G as we call it, program, primarily for the purchase of road salt. Partnering with these other agencies and institutions generally presents an opportunity for cost savings, as the aggregate volume of the product that we're purchasing together creates an economy of scale benefit for all of our communities collectively. Last year through SWOP 4G, our best quote was at a price point of $48.32 per ton. Due to the weather this past winter being much more severe in terms of both temperature and frozen precipitation, we did expect that this year's prices would be higher. We recently received the results from the group's bid through SWOP 4G, and the results were actually worse than we had expected. Many local government partners in the group only received one bid. We received two bids, the lower of which came from Detroit Salt Company at a unit price of $74.09 per ton. Obviously, this represents a significant increase, more than 50% for the price point for the commodity for this coming season. We have two line items in our budget totaling $135,000 for salt materials. So we are within budgeted resources for the potential acquisition, but I should note that this line item also includes other materials we've purchased, like beet juice and so forth, to help with our treatment procedures. So we'll be operating at a pretty thin margin this year due to that increased price. The city's requested quantity for bid was 1,500 tons of salt. I thought it worth noting, by comparison, Beaver Creek and Miamisburg, who are two examples among some of the other regional communities that participate in SWOP 4G, their requested quantities for purchase were 10,000 tons and 3,500 tons respectively. Clearly, we use a lot less salt than other communities around us. So we ask our public to understand that our surface treatment abilities are limited to the availability of salt we have. The availability of salt we have is limited to how much we have to spend on that commodity. And I know it's been council's policy, and our approach has been to be fairly austere in this area. We want to be safe, but this is, treating roads is minute for minute one of the most expensive services we provide. It's generally on overtime, a lot of fuel expenses, and obviously you can see the commodities we use are very expensive. So, we try to do the best we can, but again, we'll see how the conditions present themselves this year. It's worth noting that we do, as a standard practice, try to fill our barns up every year. So coming into the season this year, we do have about 1,000 tons of salt on hand, which is good because obviously the salt that we ordered this year will have to be delivered, so we do have product on hand to hopefully get us through a good part of the season. With all of this in mind, staff recommends that council award the de-icing road salt bid for the upcoming winter season to Detroit Salt Company, as they were demonstrated to be the lowest and best bid. And we ask for authorization for the service department to purchase from Detroit Salt Company at the $74.09 per ton bid price.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Lauterbach. Second, please. Seconded by the Vice President. discussion or question on this motion, please? Councilman?
Just a curiosity question, you mentioned beet juice. Is that used instead of salt, or is that used before the salt?
Yeah, it's used in conjunction with the salt, and what the beet juice essentially does is it allows, and I won't get into the chemical reaction, but it allows the salt to work at a lower temperature.
Freezing point depression.
Yes, you know, our salt essentially is good down to the lower teens. You get below the lower teens into single digits, you put salt down, it really has virtually no effect. So if it's really, really cold and we have accumulation, we may not put any salt down right away. We'll just go out and plow and then apply salt afterward. There is a real science to all this, but again, the beet juice historically has been kind of expensive, but it allows you to get a better result from your salt and to spread your salt a little bit further.
Is it more expensive than the salt?
It is. I know on a unit price basis it is. The other thing that we do, of course, and it's ironic with the temperatures we've had lately, we're sitting here talking about snow, but the other thing we do, we try to brine. So if we anticipate winter weather ahead of time, by getting our thoroughfares brined, it gives us a sort of a preventative treatment that allows, again, our additional treatment efforts to go further. Brine is pretty cheap. We make most of it on hand. A lot of communities buy it, but we can do it more cheaply by mixing it on hand. And so we try to employ that tactic again to stretch those resources as far as we can.
And what about sand? Do we use sand?
You know, there were a number of years ago that to try to stretch our resources, our salt resources further, we did put a higher concentration of sand mixture. Problem with that, and I know, you know, there have been frankly some very fair critiques that that really increases your cost in terms of your street sweeping. Now, so we've really cut back on the use of that. We still occasionally do it, again, depending on the weather conditions. Certain types of precipitation, we'll mix some salt in to give traction. So if we have a significant icing event, before the salt can take effect, we'll put the sand mixture with it because it helps to give traction on that ice until the salt can start to work.
I know nobody has a crystal ball, but do you look at Farmer's Almanac, or does anybody predict what kind of winter?
We actually, believe it or not, we start looking at conditions this time of year. So through the National Weather Service and some of the major other private weather services, we start looking now. You'll get some of the early forecasts for fall and winter. They're expecting this to be an El Nino year, which typically means that it's going to be perhaps a little cooler, but a little drier. In this part of the region, or this country, a part of the country. So with any luck, we'll see a little bit of a moderation of some of the conditions compared to what we had last year. Frankly, last year was, I think, certainly for older folks, it's more what we're accustomed to, or at least from Northern Ohio, what I'm more accustomed to. But hopefully we see better conditions than we did last year.
I think the citizens need to realize the cost of the 50% increase in our salt.
It's extremely expensive.
I think we changed our policy a couple of years ago, where of course, we do the main thoroughfares first.
We do.
If you're on a side street and we don't get to you right away,
Yep.
I think it's a cost factor.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that we want to continuously improve the services that we provide and perfect those services, and at least in terms of our ability to adjust to the conditions as they change. I think there were a couple of events last year that we could have handled better. We had some unique events that sort of had a training effect. We had several events in a row. And none of those events were large enough to warrant under our 3-inch policy to be out in the plats, but collectively they had several inches more than the 3 inches. We could have handled that a little better. So we've talked about that with our staff. We've adjusted our policy, and so I think you'll see our crews out in the flats, more regularly moving forward.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just have one. Looking at the chart on the back page, like an example, we bought 1,500. We're ordering 1,500 tons. So is Moraine, but yet their price is cheaper.
Yeah.
Why? What qualifies that?
Part of it has to do with, so none of these companies are local for the most part. Many of them are up in the Lake Erie region. Actually, under Lake Erie is one of the largest salt mines in the world. So depending on their method of transportation and what they can store in the region will, and where that is in proximity to us, affects the prices that we get. So believe it or not, even if they have to ship it an extra 10 or 20 miles from a central distribution center in the region, that's what tends to affect those price points by a couple dollars.
So shipping cost is actually included.
It's the
in that
transportation
tonnage.
cost to get that material
makes
to our
sense.
region.
Okay.
And it's worth noting, compared to, the price point that we got is not the lowest, but compared to some of our neighbors, it's actually quite a bit lower. I think Greene County was one that was pretty high on there. So.
Right. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other discussion or question, please?
Is there an actual market for road salt?
Oh, it's
I
a
mean,
substantial
like-
market, because it's your major salt producer, so salt's used in a lot of industrial processes, and as well as, you know, the salt that you use at, you know, table salt. So these companies usually have sub-markets for these different product lines. A few years back, I'm trying to think, it's about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, we had a particularly tough winter, and there was suspect of some collusion among the salt companies. The Attorney General's office actually got involved and sued several of the companies, and they ended up having to pay back quite a bit to the communities in the state. In fact, we got some resources back. Far be it for me to accuse anyone, but I mean, I'll be honest, I look at these results, and I do find it to be a little bit suspect that one particular vendor seems to have bid on most of them in our region, while many of the other, it looks odd to me, but again, it's through a competitive process, so I don't really have a position to question it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty good game. I'd like to buy a few calls on that. When price goes up, I can cash my calls in and get paid, you know? I mean, this is, 50% is like highway robbery, but what can we do?
And part of it is that both the Midwest as well as the East Coast got really, you know, hammered with a lot heavier conditions last year. So a lot of the inventory supplies in the eastern U.S. were pretty depleted. So supply and demand.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace.
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Dean.
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye. Thank you. And our last item from the city manager, an administrative motion approving Greenway Plat Section 2 without accepting the streets shown thereon as public streets. Mr. City Manager.
It's been a busy summer, so this is our last item here this evening. Staff is recommending the administrative motion this evening, which the adoption of which would approve the Greenway Plat Section 2 as requested by Greene County. City staff has been working with the County Development Department for about the last 18 months on the concept of commercial expansion on the subject property. Tonight's requested action is necessary prior to the county's issuance of an RFP and sealed bid process for acquisition and development of the site, which they intend on pursuing sometime in August, I believe. With an approval this evening, the replatting would still be subject to Planning and Zoning Commission's conditions, and upon the condition that approval of the plat does not yet constitute an acceptance of the proposed streets as public streets. Staff is actually very excited about the potential of this project, and we are very appreciative of the county for working with us and recognizing the development value of this site for not only our community but for the broader community. Staff does recommend approval of the motion this evening.
Thank you. Motion, please, for the approval.
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Lauterbach. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by the mayor. Discussion or question on this item, please.
Mr. President, I'll mention this actually at a special zoning meeting, planning and zoning meeting last Thursday. This was approved unanimously by zoning and planning board with one abstention, but it noted that this is a really shot in the arm for our community. So I appreciate the county stepping forward on this and our ability to partner with them and get moving on this.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace.
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens.
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach.
Aye.
Councilman Smith.
Aye.
Councilman Dean. Aye. Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And last item under our new business, didn't want to leave our finance director out. An administrative motion, please, approving the schedule of bills in the amount of $1,300,702.11. Motion, please.
So move.
Moved by the Vice President. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Dean. Discussion or question on our bills, please.
Is there
Council. Sorry.
Oh, just one item, on page 7. It's got 3 bottles of alcohol. To Keith Cook.
Yeah.
Is that? I hope
It's not drinking
what I'm
alcohol.
thinking.
Actually,
Very cheap drinking alcohol it is.
it's not that was a long day for Keith.
Okay, I was hoping we're not providing our employees with
Correct,
alcohol.
because it would be illegal to purchase drinking
Yes, it
alcohol.
would be.
Actually, I hate to admit this, but the truth is, When we have instances where we suspect there may be some bed bugs, this is part of the treatment in our public facilities that we start, part of the action that we take to help make sure that none of those critters go home with our staff, so.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
Yep. I thought you would be.
I am almost afraid to ask any other questions about the bills this evening, please.
Transparency.
Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean? Aye. Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Ingle?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. This time we have reports of committees. First one is Traffic Commission. Councilman Dean, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Traffic Commission met first Monday of July, and we talked about, first item was disability parking spaces. The Traffic Commission set up some parameters that they wanted to write some legislation for the parameters for disability parking space permits and applications. So we discussed that. We also talked about the intersection of South Whiteman Street and East Main Street, and about the stop sign there, the no turn, no left turn. So we had a discussion about that. We had a discussion about the no turn on red signs all downtown with the downtown safety project. And the reason why they're there now is because with the bike lane downtown, there's more traffic and more points of conflict and stuff. So they thought best to put the no turn on reds signs to protect the bicyclist. So we discussed that issue. We also discussed the traffic light at the intersection of East Main Street and Fair Street. Mr. Scrivens, apparently that only needs an administrative motion to remove that. So as I think there is right now a sign out that says signal to be removed. So they will go through the process of removing that, put that sign out. If there's no accidents or any comments or questions or concerns within, I believe, 60 days, then that signal will be removed. And then we discussed the bike path crossing on West Main Street near McDonald's and the yield to pedestrians, and how it was yield to pedestrians but not bicyclists, and then how they had to be in the crosswalk and not necessarily seeing someone just on the sidewalk and just stop traffic for them. So, any questions from anyone?
Yeah, just on that intersection, if I'm a bicyclist coming, is there a stop?
I
No,
believe,
there's a button or a stop?
I believe so. I have not biked on that, but I do believe so.
I'm just curious, because once they hit that button, the yellow lights go.
Yeah.
Does that mean, and I've asked this before, does that mean the cars stop?
When you see the yellow light, it's just to catch your attention. It's not necessarily meaning that you have to stop.
Yeah, part of the,
Still has the right.
Yeah, okay, I think a lot of people are confused.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we talked about this before a little bit. We need to do a little better job of promoting that. And part of the challenge we face is that the rules are a little different as they pertain to pedestrians versus bicyclists, because bicyclists are not considered to be pedestrians, but both pedestrians and bicyclists use that trail. So we're a little hamstrung in terms of what we can do there, but I think Councilman Dean is right. I mean, we need to be a little clearer and make sure that we're having communication with the Traffic Commission and back with the general public about what the expectation is there. Folks are a little confused.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else for the Traffic Commission, please?
Yes, Mr. President. I don't know if Councilman Dean can answer this or not. And it might be more for the city manager when we're talking about traffic. There was a mention tonight of a second roundabout. This is brought up a second time. I am not aware that we're pursuing any second roundabout.
There has been some evaluation of an intersection here on the east side of town that it may conform to standards for a roundabout, but there are no plans in the works right now.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clear that up, that that's misconception out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would add just to that communication, I know that people obviously hold whatever opinions that they care to hold about a roundabout, not a roundabout. It is a fact of life that in Europe, roundabouts have been present for many decades. And the overall traffic safety profile in Europe is much better than the United States. Just a fact of life. Anything else for the Traffic Commission, please?
Mr. President.
Yes.
I'd like to compliment Councilman Dean on the work that he's doing there, and it ain't easy. Everybody calls and says, well, why you gotta sit for 3 minutes on Dayton Avenue at Allison? Yeah, I said, well, I'll take it up with the Traffic Commission. So at some point, we'll have to get our lights back regulated to where we can live with them, because right now, it's frustrating. I mean, Xenia's not a teeming metropolis, so therefore we shouldn't be sitting at lights and polluting the air when we should be going on about our business. So that's why I'd always been a strong advocate of blinking lights. I mean, especially after a certain hour in the evening. I mean, you're sitting here, there's no crosstown traffic. I mean, why you have to sit and wait all this time just to go through the city of Xenia? So just thank you, sir, for the work that you're doing.
Mr.
So
Councilman, if
it
I
ain't
could,
easy.
Mr. President, if I could, just a quick response. I think you're right, that with the changing nature of the series of signals and intersections downtown,
Right.
the broader system needs to be tweaked, there's no doubt about it. The best answer I can give is, once ODOT is done with the project and out of our way, we will be able to go in and make some of the
Fine-tune.
adjustments. The other thing to keep in mind, and I think this is good information for the general public, we don't actually go in and tweak a stoplight. There is a computer system that runs all of those, and they are all interrelated. So when you resequence one stoplight, it has the potential to affect multiple other stoplights. So it really isn't as easy as going and tweaking one light. You have to make sure that it's not having an adverse effect on a number of other intersections. So, but you're right, some of them are in need of some adjustment. We're aware of that, and we're trying to get these additional project components complete, get ODOT out of the way, and then we'll be taking a closer look at it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anything finally for the Traffic Commission? If not, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, Councilman Lauterbach, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, I was in the hospital, not able to attend that meeting. No, I didn't have brain surgery or hemorrhoid surgery. I had gallbladder surgery, but I was unable to attend that meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Certainly hope your recovery was speedy.
That wasn't, but that's not.
We're glad you're here now.
Yeah,
Let me help you with this one.
Thank you.
We're glad you're better now.
Gotta watch his fats, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll move to appointed official reports and council comments. Mr. City Manager.
Really brief, just a reminder that council chat, August 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. next door. Courtesy of Dairy Station, there'll also be some free ice cream served. So if you're a fan of either coffee or ice cream, I know Councilman Dean's got his attention. Please come out and join us and have some conversation with city leadership and just discuss how we plow forward as a community.
Thank you.
What's
Mr. Finance,
6 to 8?
Correct.
Thank you.
anything for our
Yeah.
city manager, please?
I do. Church Street, the improvement at the intersection there, when's that gonna start?
We are in the process of the site acquisition. That project actually will break ground next spring.
Next year, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else for our city manager, please? Mr. Finance Director?
I have nothing this evening.
Thank you. Anything for our finance director? Thank you. Our law director is absent this evening under the weather, so we will move to comments from the mayor first, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Monday, July 16th, myself, the city manager, and assistant city manager had the opportunity to attend, it's at Heritage, Ohio?
Yes.
And the Main Street project, and it was a well-attended meeting by both downtown business owners and building owners who are looking to come together and continue to see improvements and a revitalization downtown. So a very positive meeting, a lot of buy-in. It was very exciting. And then on the next Monday, July 23rd, again, the city manager and myself sat down with Commissioner Kugler and Mr. Huddleston from the county. Just had a very positive conversation about some projects that we're working together on. We are trying to get together more regularly and have discussions of how we can help each other better and come together as a community and see some of these projects that we're talking about tonight come to fruition. Let's see, on Wednesday, July 25th, I had an opportunity with several of the area mayors to have lunch with Colonel Sherman, the new commander at the Wright Pat Air Force Base. And he's very excited to come to each community, including ours, and have some one-on-one time and get to know our community better. So we're very excited to welcome him here. And I believe that is it.
Thank you very much. Councilman Lauterbach, please.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I want to welcome to Xenia Stewart and Jill Young. They bought the car wash across from Nick's. Actually, I think it's called Car Wash. And Councilman Dean, I do spread my business. I go to your brother's car wash too. But they are very excited about being in Xenia, and we send the best of luck. And I want my condolences go to, wow, I hope I don't get this wrong. Was it Mary Crockett's mother? Mm-hmm. Mother passed. Mm-hmm. So my condolences to her and her family. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to remind everyone, I believe next week's Greene County Fair.
Mm.
Yeah, it starts Sunday, and that would be July 29th through August 4th. And that's always a lot of fun. I've been to 3 fairs this year already, and look forward to going to the Greene County Fair. Just like to thank city staff for their work. We had the opportunity tonight to tour, as council members, to tour the police station and the improvements made both for safety of the officers and subjects that they take in. So we appreciate the work that they're doing to keep us safe here in Xenia. And there they go. And then also just wanted to say kudos to Dayton YMCA for the improvements they're making in our new REACH project. There's a couple videos on Facebook. You can see inside some of the improvements they're made. And so it's encouraging. I know there was some comments on there, and it's almost pathetic. I have to chuckle some of the negative comments. One person said, well, why is there only one pool inside? And they actually said there's 2, because there's going to be a therapy pool and a Olympic-sized pool. And then they were getting bashed because they didn't have an outdoor pool. And I mean, an outdoor pool, folks, is in Ohio, you use it 3 months out of the year. And outdoor pools are just kind of a thing of the past for public entities. You know, we have one that, yeah. We have public pool. Well, we have Pinecrest. It's not a public pool; it's private, but they take visitors there. So, again, appreciate the job that they're doing, and we have a splash pad in our community, and I'm very thankful for that. I know a lot of people take their kids to that and utilize it, so I feel we're really blessed with that. And so again, thanks to city staff, and I hope everyone's having a great summer. Thank you.
Councilman Scrivens, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, City of Xenia. Since we last met, I had the opportunity to ride along with one of our finest Xenia police officers, Officer Cecil, and he was able to put up with me for about 4 hours. And just to see a day in the life of a police officer was enlightening, to see it from the police officer's side. So before you make up your mind, look at both sides. So thank you, Officer Cecil. Appreciate all the work that you do. I attended a stroke conference at Greene Memorial Hospital Monday. Very enlightening. Good training. They're having another session called Stop the Bleeding. So they're going to teach us how to direct pressure and tourniquets and everything. Everyone should know how to stop bleeding. You might come up on a situation where you need to stop bleeding. So, and just today, I had the good fortune to tour one of our wastewater treatment plants. They're on Glady Run, I think they call it. And to see the effluent that comes in, mostly by gravity, a few lift stations that lift it up and take it to where it's supposed to be dealt with. 3 or 4 or 5 processes happen, and you'd be surprised, before everything is released, going back into Glady Run, it's almost drinking water quality. So to take effluent and clarify it enough to where it's almost drinking water quality is pretty good. But our major problem is taking phosphorus out of our effluent, and a lot of that comes from our yard waste. So we're hurting ourselves when we don't keep our grass from going down the storm drains. So, and with that, Mr. President, we had our tour today of our currently recently remodeled Justice Center, and I'm really happy for our police division. They have now space to operate, and they're not sitting all on top of one another, and they seem to be well suited for that space that they've gotten. And I wanted to give a shout out here to our financial manager here. And this 2017 year-end statement looks pretty good. I compared it with 2016. I got both of them. And I'm saying, I can't spend all my days trying to figure out all these numbers. So thank you for the job that you do, sir.
Thank you.
And right now on our operating plan, how are we approximating our budgetary estimates 6 months into it for this year?
Yeah, so we have financial projections going out 5 years, and we have different assumptions on where we'll land. For the most part, we're on pace to pretty much meet those expectations for 2018. Our income tax collections are at about 1% increase through the first 6 months. We projected a 2% increase, so we're a little low there.
Shortfall.
We want to see some growth here over the last 6 months, so we reached that 2% goal. But generally, we're on pace to meet the projections.
Very good. With that, Mr. President, you're back my time.
Thank you. Councilman Dean.
Thank you. I just had a question for the city manager about the project, the concept plan at the Dayton Avenue. Was there any other plans back when it was first approved that came up forward, or any other developers interested in it?
There have been discussions about that site dating back 15 to 20 years. There have been multiple plans. Councilman Lauterbach's probably the longest tenured, so he can probably remember some of those conversations over a long period of time. We spent a long time with myself, my predecessor, the development director, talking with the property owner, discussing options. And for a long time, we looked at retail, and we came to the consensus with them that retail for the balance of that property is just not feasible, not in the world today. So residential became the best option, but again, it doesn't have the size and the conditions to be conducive to single-family homes, and we looked at that as well. So there were a number of plans that were suggested, and when this plan came through, it was not without some concern and some hesitation by the council at the time. So that site has a very lengthy history, and a lot of discussion has gone into it. It's a problematic site, just a lot of unique conditions around it.
Okay, thank you. One other thing, could I get possibly get the roll call from the first plan that was approved?
Yeah.
Could we have some research done on that?
Michelle.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's it. Mr. Vice President.
I actually have nothing tonight, so.
Thank you. I just have two comments, both around our police department. First is tagging on to several of my colleagues' comments about visiting our remodeled Justice Center. It was absolutely a necessity to do that. Our police force was living in an area, 42 or 45 officers, Mr. City Manager?
42 sworn personnel.
In 6,000 or less square feet, which is incredibly under the recommendation for any police size unit of that size. What has been done there is nothing short of amazing in terms of turning that space into an appropriate area for our officers to live in, to work in, to prepare in, to go out and defend us every day. It also increases the safety and security of, again, as it was said, those people who are brought in relationship to some potential violation of law. And it also is much better equipped for us to both support and effectively engage the victims of crime. Before this, it was horrific how the essentially victims of crime and potential offenders would essentially almost meet downstairs as the booking process might be going on, and they would be seeking to take statements from witnesses. So I am very pleased to see this finally come to conclusion. I think it was very well done, and as I understand, came in a bit under budget. We were able to make some other investments from that will see long-term usage in terms of our emergency operations center, which is a plus. And again, congratulations to staff for managing that project. And then on a more tactical note, as many of you probably heard or saw today, there was an escape from the Greene County Jail earlier today. That individual was recaptured within 1 hour, recaptured by a Xenia Police Division officer. And the point besides all that being good, that was recaptured quickly and by the Xenia police, what is very refreshing to me in our age of, I didn't see anything, I didn't know anything, I saw nothing and don't want to be involved. I understand that the escapee was captured or aided in capture by a tip from a resident who was paying attention to what was going on, who called the police department and actually put our officer onto that individual and resolved the situation peacefully and quickly. So my congratulations to the Xenia Police and to our community for taking that step of, if you see something, say something.
That's right.
Past that, I have nothing else to add this evening unless anyone else does. I believe there is a request for an executive session following this meeting. So I will move that we adjourn to executive session to consider confidential information related to economic development projects per Xenia Codified Ordinance 206.04A7 and Ohio Revised Code 121.22G8 and pending or imminent litigation per Xenia Codified Ordinance 206.04A3 and Ohio Revised Code 121.22G3, and would request a second, please.
Second.
Seconded by the Vice President. Any discussion on the motion, please?
Are we gonna be coming back in, do you think?
For information purposes, I do not believe there is any expectation that we will come back and transact any city business post our executive session, just for your information. We will come out of executive session and close here in our formal session if anyone would care to remain, but there will be no business items transacted after that. Roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Scrivens?
Aye.
Councilman Lauterbach?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.